Hello and welcome to Kemet Capital, community of holders and seekers of African capital. I'm your host JS, and you guys already know before we begin, we start with our word of affirmation. Our raison d'être, guys, we need to dream about this formula. It's the Cobb Douglas production function. On our way to make Africa great again, it's through economic might, economic power, and nobody's gonna come and save us, guys. It's not USA aid, it's not Great Britain, it's not France, not Germany. It's us, guys, and we need to produce more in a more efficient way. And just a reminder, guys, you can apply this formula to in any aspect of endeavors, whether you are an aspiring musician, an aspiring, football player, basketball player, MMA fighter, pilot, engineer. This formula applies to you as well. And the capital is the limited resources that we all have, which is the time, and the labor here is our effort, our energy. All right, guys, let's jump into it. Today, we're going to react to this video that I wanted to share with you because lately we'll be discussing a lot about, you know, uh, fintech in general, payment system integration, and I thought this conversation here will be, beneficial to members of the community. All right, guys. Without further ado, let's jump into the video and react as we go along.
African countries are still lagging behind when it comes to the ICT connectivity, with majority of locals lacking access to internet services to having weak regulatory frameworks. CNBC Africa is now joined by Edna Moore, the head of partnerships, innovations and digital health, as well as at the IPRIS project lead at Spider. And we'll also be joined by Trilok Dabsing, Director of Information Technology at the Information and Communication Technologies Authority, ICTA, based in Port Louis, Mauritius. Thank you so much, lady and gentlemen, for making time to join us on the program. And I'd like to just kick it off with Edna, looking at the opportunity in terms of the ICT sector in Africa. There's been a lot of talk in terms of investments and strengthening the capacity and regulatory capacity, to be precise. I just want you to open it up for us in terms of what are you seeing in regards to the continent's ICT moment?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Digitalization is something that is not limited to one place. And in the project that I lead, we work with sub-Saharan African regulators, both the national and the regional organizations that have the expertise in this. And we see remarkable progress in terms of digitalization. What we at Spider are keen to see is how can we ensure that this digitalization includes everybody from the get-go so that we can take the opportunities and run with it. We see that despite that progress, we still have 60% of Africans who are even living close to the infrastructure, not using those services. There is a lack of trust in the services. There is opportunity to include more women, where only 31% of women in Africa compared to 43% of men have access to digital services. So we see that there has to be improvement, and that is why we see that partnerships are the way to go. It is not only the job of regulators to build capacity in the digital space, also working in international development must take their responsibility, but we have to include different societies in order to make this work for everybody. And so in IPRIS, we have 43 sub-Saharan African countries included, as well as 4 absolutely crucial regional regulatory organizations. And together with our peers in Europe, we tackle this head on.
All right.
Right. Good introduction by Edna, but I'm going to disagree a little bit because, those Western institutions inclusion, the role of women, or accessibility, difference in accessibility between men and women. But in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, guys, you guys let me know in the comment. We should not be focused on inclusion, but we should be focused on infrastructure. It doesn't matter whether women or men have more access. We need to make sure that that access is actually, sustainable. It's accessible. It's there for the people to use, regardless of gender, regardless of affiliation, race, and so forth. We need to focus on infrastructure. Make sure that the infrastructure is in top shape. Make sure that the infrastructure, can withstand, aggression or some sort of disasters or whatnot. The robustness of the infrastructure should be the priority, not the inclusion. We can focus about the inclusion later on, but at this stage, where she mentioned that 60% of the population that are living close to the infrastructure still don't use the technology. We need to focus more on building more infrastructure to allow more people to have access to it, instead of focusing on different group here and there, genders and so forth. Right now, for Africa, the priority should be infrastructure. And apology, guys.
Quite an interesting and ambitious outlook you have just presented for us. And allow me to bring in Trilok. And looking at the opportunities, I know Mauritius has really put in a lot of investments in the ICT space. You have come out as one of the tigers that continue to adopt innovation and scale investments in the ICT front. Perhaps talk to us about some of the opportunities you're seeing on the African continent and which sectors are ripe for investment, and of course, what needs to happen for this investment to come through.
Thank you, Abby. So let me first talk about the Mauritian landscape. In fact, you are right. In Mauritius, in terms of the ICT digital journey, we have achieved a lot in terms of our internet connectivity. Reason being that Mauritius is a very small country compared to the other African countries, right? So this is okay. And in terms of ICT services, also Mauritius is doing very well because we have mobile penetration, just for you to understand, which is rating at over 170%. And now what we are doing, we're striving towards optimizing this infrastructure.
Did you say 170% integration? What does that mean, guys? Let me know if you're familiar in the comment.
More forcefully, in the sense that we are capitalizing on the use of the infrastructure for e-government services, for digital trade, for fintech. Reason being that we are moving in a direction whereby we believe that the digital landscape will be the future of the island. And I believe that in Africa also, we are moving in the same direction, although this is not happening at the same pace, right? Africa also is advancing very rapidly in its digital journey, but the issue is in terms of digital divide. So it's doing it unevenly, right? So what can we do about it? This is where I think the program of IPRUS kicks in. When we talk of Africa, digital divide is still very wide, right? If we take the stats, 40% of the African users in Africa, only 40% uses internet as compared to 70% globally. There's a huge digital divide between the geographical areas, urban areas and the rural areas, right? So the issue is that in rural areas, users in rural areas have 3 times less opportunity to use mobile internet, for instance. The other issue is in terms of
Guys, let's not get it twisted. It's all over the world. Even in the United States, you go you go to some regions. In multiple regions in the world, even in developing country. We're not going to talk about China or Asia because over there, in terms of technology, they are well into the 25th century, maybe. They are well advanced compared to the rest of the world. But other region, you have some infrastructure or internet desert all over the place. Not only in Africa, but all over the place. But still, since our economy and the future of our economic development relies a lot on um, information technology ICT, we need to increase that number from over 70%, as you mentioned, in developing countries. 70% of the population in Africa, we should aim to like 90%, because if you guys are familiar with the channel, we've been reviewing several, entities on the continent, Chart Deck, Hello Tractor, stuff like that, who uses internet. Also, we've talked about digital payment system. We need the information, the ICT infrastructure to be robust, to be strong, to be able to, to help the financial system and the financial infrastructure of the continent.
Gender gap, right? If we take the stats, we see that women are more likely to have 37% less chance to use internet connectivity compared to men. Affordability also is another issue that needs to be tackled, right? When we see the stats again here, we see that in Africa, 1 GB of mobile data would cost around, will be equivalent to around 3% of monthly income, right? It is
Wow,
far
that's
ahead
huge.
above the UN target rate of 2%. So there's a lot of work. But more importantly, in terms of infrastructure in Africa, we see that electricity is also, access to electricity is also an issue,
Yes,
right? With a
yes.
population
Guys, I'm sorry, but again, we've talked about this several times. You cannot have a car, you cannot have a Ferrari engine into that car. That car is just going to sit in the garage collecting dust. That's what's happening in Africa. We don't have power. We don't have an engine to drive our economy, to drive output. So we need to tackle some of those issues in the background first before moving into ICT, because without power generation, you cannot have access to information communication technology. I'm sorry, you need power, you need electricity to move those uh, you know those digital centers or whatnot, connectivity and so forth. It requires power. Until we figure out, some strategy to democratize access to power or generation of power, maybe using solar, wind, innovation in that sector will still be lacking, in terms of growth.
1.5 billion, almost 600 million of African users don't have access to electricity. So there's a lot of challenges. But the point I want to make here is that the kind of initiative that has been crafted by the Spider IPRIS precisely tackle this issue of digital divide. Let me give you a brief detailed overview of my experience with IPRIS. I have been participating in IPRIS as in both the English and the French version. I was a participant of Mauritius in the English version, and I was a participant as a representative of CRASA in the French version. And the innovative and forward-looking aspect of this program is that not only it looks at the technical aspects, but it also look at the social aspect components. What I mean by that, in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion,
Let him finish. Let
this
him cook.
component equips the regulator and the policymakers when we go through this capacity building program with the necessary tools to ensure that digital transformation is inclusive, fair, and affordable.
All right. Quite detailed insights there. And taking it back.
Bro, stop cutting him off. Let him finish. Let him, lay down his thought. Come on, Mr.
Back to
Journalist.
Edna, I'm just curious to know, in terms of seeing connectivity as an engine of growth, how have you been able to work with the regulators, especially listening to what Trilok is saying around poor infrastructure in the ICT sector? All this on one hand, it's lack of infrastructure, on the other end, it means there is a gap. How do you bridge this to take us to that level where connectivity
to
can
put some
be
investment in there,
translated into economic growth?
pour some money into the sector.
Absolutely. Just to reiterate also that this project is part of the of many of the economic areas in Africa. There's pillar projects, and since it has the backing of the EU, Sweden, and Luxembourg, this is a key area to focus on. And just to take as an example, if you think about the African map and the language device that we have, as well as the many operators who charge roaming charges. If you just think of a border in your country and what populations near a border town might be experiencing, they might be afraid of incurring roaming charges. They might be afraid of doing business, and just the loss of that revenue is huge. And we have great initiatives within the program that we can see help to get the unconnected connected in a meaningful way, so they can participate in activities that bring income. For example, in Kenya, getting the Universal Access Fund to areas where it needs to. Mauritius has a great program on cybersecurity, which is a very important aspect when you talk about economic development, as well as health and education and other key areas, of course. And we have, of course, also projects like the one in Tanzania, looking at what does satellite connection mean in all those areas that we need to consider. So there is those infrastructural challenges, but there are also challenges about digital literacy. You have a continent that is equipped with the passion and the youth. 60% of Africans being young people, they are keen to use digitalization as a means to income. And yet there are issues of affordability and access to devices, which Trilok just mentioned. So just like the rest of the world, digitalization is an opportunity to level the playing if we do it in a meaningful way through inclusion, diversity and equity, as Trilok mentioned.
Well, there are interesting numbers that
Western people coming in with the DEI. Meanwhile, we have structural and infrastructural diversity, equity, and inclusion. Guys, I don't want to say it's not important, but it's not important right now. It's important maybe in the future when the infrastructure is rolling well, everything is moving, it's running smoothly. Now we can focus on those social aspects. But at the moment, the key is the infrastructure. The key is the fund being poured into those projects that will bring internet through satellite to facilitate access. You don't have to build phone towers and so forth. That should be the priority. That should be the focus. If the EU really wants to help us put a satellite in orbit for us to share internet through that satellite. Don't come out here and tell us that, oh, women don't have less access than men. It doesn't really matter, even though it's true. But in in economic terms, what are that different? What does it make to the country? We need to make sure that everyone has access before figuring out, before nitpicking on who has more access than the other. Put the infrastructure in place, and then we discuss about that later.
I'd like to bring up as we have this discussion. When you look at the African Union's digital transformation strategy covering 2020 to 2030, it identifies Africa's youth, nearly 60% of the population, as its greatest asset. On the flip side, a report by International Finance Corporation in conjunction with Google, the economy report, shows that internet economy is projected to grow to about $180 billion by 2025. Has this been mere numbers to you, Trilok, or have you seen the numbers literally trickling down when it comes to the power of the internet economy?
far as I'm concerned, I think that the power of the internet should be capitalized upon in the sense that everything is on the exponential growth path, meaning that even the different countries in Africa had different pace, but everybody is moving in the right direction. For instance, when you are talking about the African Union digital transformation, I believe that each country within Africa also has its own digital transformation strategy agenda. But then the good thing is that these strategies are aligned either regionally and also at the continent level. You see, when you're talking about the
It's good to know.
AFTA, I think one of the colleagues was mentioning the AFTA. The digital transformation agenda is aligned with the provisions of the AFTA in order to ensure that digital trade is ensured on the continent in a very seamless and smooth manner. You see, so what I'm trying to say is that if we move in a cohesive, harmonized way, which is the role of the regional regulatory
Cooperation.
organization, is to ensure that there is ICT harmonization of ICT regulation. I think that to capitalize on the use of internet for digital trade, for the digital economy itself, is the way ahead.
All right.
100%.
And quite important that you've touched on the nexus between what the continent is doing and what's happening on ground. And Edna, as we wrap up this conversation, I just want to know, when you look at the regulatory environment and the potential it has for digital consumers, workers, and innovators, what do you see in your crystal ball?
I see, just like Trilok mentioned, the role of EACO in East Africa, CRASA in Southern, ARTAC in Central, and WATRA in the West, to work together, not only in the regulatory space, but to talk to ministries, to academia, to private sector companies. That is the only way to go. Otherwise, we will be doing duplication over and over and over
Exactly.
again.
Yeah.
Together in dialogue, we can find the pathways to mobilize the youth in jobs. We can create the opportunities that we all see and hope for, but we shouldn't be naive. Of course, there are lots of new technologies that we need to consider, and we need to consider how to deploy them, how to license them, how to limit them, and how to exploit them for the benefit of all the population in Africa.
Fantastic place to end the conversation. Thank you so much, Edna Somre, as well as Trilok Dabesing, for joining us from Stockholm and Mauritius.
Right, guys. Interesting conversation again with Edna and Trilok. My takeaway is theme are always coming back, recurring. We have a recurring theme, cooperation, harmonization, operability within the continent and between countries in the continent. And our generation is also a big issue that we need to tackle. But at least, guys, we're moving, as Trudok say, in the right direction, even though the speed is not the same for different region. But at least, there's movement, there's development there, and we'll need it, guys, because the future of our economy will be a lot of digital, will be a lot digital based in the majority. So we need to have a robust ICT system, cybersecurity and so forth, as Edna mentioned, but also, harmonization of policies. It has to be harmonized on a continent level, and maybe why not to be integrated globally. All right, guys, you let me know what you think in the comment. I enjoy having this conversation with you, and stay safe out there. I'll see you next one. Bye.